And then when I got back from that trip, it was like full speed ahead for the rebrand. We were getting all the assets together, switching everything over, team changes, technical changes, and it was just like so much happening all at once. And it was definitely a very stressful time. And I do think that that was where some of my burnout really started showing its head. Welcome to this week's episode of She's So Lucky. My name is Les. I am your host, and I'm coming at you with a solo episode today, which I feel like I haven't done in ages. Last year, I did a bunch of solo episodes. I think almost half of the episodes that I put out last year were solo. If you're not familiar with this show, I come out with new episodes every Tuesday, and then we do the occasional bonus episode if, the mood strikes. Often that has more to do with advertisers than us having extra content, but we don't do seasons or anything. It's just continuous. Every Tuesday, new episode, over and over, forever. At least that's how it feels. And last year, of the probably 60 plus episodes that we put out in the year, about half of them were solos. And that was a lot. And I said, I ain't doing that again. Not doing that again because solo episodes are actually surprisingly a lot harder than interviewing people, at least for me. But they're not something that I get rid of entirely. One, because I know so many people in this community love the solo episodes. And so we keep them in kind of as crowd favorites. And two, booking guests is hard. And sometimes we don't always, have everything come together, but another Tuesday comes around and we got to have that episode come out. So I will have my solos supplement every now and again. Now, if you're watching this episode on YouTube, you might say, Les, where are you right now? To that, I would say, I'm actually at home. And if you're listening to the audio and you hear maybe a little noise, maybe a little street noise, maybe a little building noise, I live in New York City, and you might hear a little something. I'm going to do my best to keep the sound quality good, but sometimes things happen. So I'm keeping it real with y'all. Sometimes we have little life sounds, but we're going to try our best to make it sound and look as good as possible. If you needed another recession indicator, me recording from home is it, because studio time is expensive and I'm having to reel it in. I thought that I would just do more of a relaxed episode, just kind of letting y'all know how I'm doing. So I don't know if I've really done an episode like that in a really long time. And just sharing some little kind of BTS of what's going on with me, how 2025 is going, just some little habits and things I've picked up that have been helpful for me. And we're just going to chat and we're just going to kind of hang out. I think why my solo episodes have been so popular with my existing audience is because in the past, I would usually share a lot of tips. I would share a lot of advice. I would often have a lot of very how-to based content. And y'all, I have toed all my house. I have house all my toed. And when I tell you I don't have another tip in me, I've been sharing tips on the internet since 2014. And when I tell you this brain is empty, I don't have not one more tip. Okay. Only tip I have left is whatever I give to the amazing people who help me with different services. It's when I pay a tip, because y'all, I ain't got no more tips. So I'm having to get a little more creative when I come on here solo with what I share, because I think my how tos and my tip giving days, they're in the archives. I don't know if I necessarily have any new tips. So I'm just gonna come hang out, catch up with y'all, chit chat. Like I said, it's currently May 2025 when I am recording and releasing this episode. And I can't say that my mental health has been the best lately. And I think that's for a couple of reasons. A lot of it has been work related. I have had a lot of very lofty goals to grow this platform. Part ambition, part of just kind of my own ambitions and aspirations, and partially for survival. which sounds a little intense to say. If you don't know, I do this podcast and content full time. I have been doing it full time since December 2023, even though I've been doing this podcast since the fall of 2018. So from the fall of 2018 until December 2023, I did it as a side hustle. I did it on the side of my day job working in corporate. I had corporate marketing jobs during that time. And then I left my last corporate marketing job in 2023 to do this podcast full time. And I've been doing it full time for about the past year and a half. And my first year of doing it full time definitely had a lot of ups and downs. I think the first few months that I was full time, it took me a while to find my footing. And then once I got into Q2 of 2024, things really leveled out and I was able to really hit my stride. And then this year has just been a weird mixed bag of events where I have been booked and busy. I've been real busy, which is a blessing. I've been on a lot of stages. I've had some really cool opportunities and I've had some great visibility, but the stages and the opportunities and the visibility didn't come with money. So I had a precarious situation where I was working more and working harder and working more hours, but making like the least amount of money I've ever made since going full time. That was my April 2025, where I had was working more than ever between my live shows and the rebrand because we rebranded the podcast and I was recording a bunch of episodes and I was going on other people's shows and I was doing all this stuff. And none of those things made me money. Actually, they were quite expensive. All of those things cost me a lot of money. And so I had to say, Savannah, slow down, honey. Why are we working more and making less? We are hustling backwards. And I had to kind of sit with myself and be like, okay, we're going to reframe, we're going to reprioritize because what is this, honey? I also had to realize that there is a difference between being a self-sustaining solopreneur and having a thriving, scaling business. And the aspiration that I have for myself is not just to put out podcast episodes every Tuesday for forever, but it is to really build a thriving, scaling platform or business of some sort that I can scale, hopefully, maybe one day sell or kind of step away from so that I can kind of enjoy the fruits of my labor and have capital to invest in other things and move on to other career aspirations. And so I was having this kind of come to Jesus moment with myself where I realized, girl, the things that you are doing, you are a hamster on a wheel, Miss Honey. You're not doing anything that's actually helping you get to that aspiration. The only thing that you're doing is making it so that you have to come out with another episode next Tuesday. And do you want to do that for forever? Do you want to post on Instagram and TikTok begging people to listen to your podcast and engage with your content forever? The answer is no. And so all of that, all of those conversations, all of those realizations have definitely taken a toll on my mental health and have just kind of rocked me a little bit because I've always been somebody who has relied heavily on my ambition, who has taken a lot of pride in that. And it's also not lost on me that recently we have had episodes that have challenged that belief. Like last month, I had Daria Burke, author of the memoir of my own making, on the show. And really, the center message of that conversation was that ambition isn't the most important thing. So when I was sitting down with her, recording that episode in the thick of going through it, where I'm like, why am I working so hard and making no money and not getting anywhere that I actually want to be? It rocked me a little bit and it's helped me kind of challenge some of the beliefs that I had and realize that maybe I should be doing things differently. Now, what differently I'm going to be doing, I don't know. I haven't gotten that far yet. I've only gotten so far as to say, okay, we're going to maybe try to do things a little bit differently. We're going to go back to the drawing board because my initial thought process when I was doing all of this was thinking, okay, I'm going to build this podcast and then I'm going to turn it into a media empire and then I'm going to sell that media empire. And then when I'm like 40, I'm going to retire and I'm going to go off the grid and I'm going to write romance novels under a pen name and I'm going to just invest in other businesses and maybe consult and advise and just kind of vibe out. Still want to do that. That is still the ultimate goal, but I'm realizing, okay, maybe my initial thought that content was going to be the thing to help me get the capital to get there, it might not be that. So, in working with coaches and talking to my therapist, I'm beginning to open my mind to see what else could be possible for me so that I could still maybe get to that place in my life that I want to be or get to a better place. But it just might require a different path, or it just might require a different means to an end. I say all of that to say I'm not planning on going anywhere. It's not really going to change anything that I'm doing here. But I'm just realizing that I don't think this was going to be like the ticket to my future that I once thought it was going to be. And that's okay. It means that maybe I'm meant to go do something different, something better, maybe something a little less intensive, that I can rely on content because I like it, because I like being nosy, because I like interviewing people, because I like talking about different things. But finding some peace with, okay, maybe this isn't going to be the thing that's going to get you there. So, what can you learn from this while you're doing it? And how can you find another way to get to where you really want to be? And when I tell you that doing all of that reflection and work and dismantling those beliefs and thinking about what that's going to be and trying to figure out what's next, it does a lot to your mind. It is taxing. It is tiring. It is challenging. So that's a lot of what I have been kind of dealing with and going through, is realizing that maybe the career plan that I made for myself may not be the end all be all. Maybe there's another plan, and I'm open to that, and I'm mapping that out and trying to figure out what's going to be next. And so, through a lot of that, I have had these really ambitious, lofty goals to grow this platform to be something massive. And I have felt discouraged at times when the results did not, you know, show kind of the effort that we've put in to really try and grow, specifically this podcast. Um, Over the past probably year and a half, it has been really, really challenging to grow this show. And that is not a unique experience that I'm having. That's actually an experience that a lot of podcasters are having. I'm in community with a lot of other shows, and I do tend to have these conversations with other people whose shows are kind of at a similar point as mine, where it's like, we've been doing this for a while. We've seen the different seasons, we've seen the industry change. It is a different perspective if you're maybe someone newer to podcasting, but being in community with a lot of my peers, it's like we're kind of all going through it. We're like, where are the people? Who is listening? How do we get more people to listen? And so I'm not necessarily saying that I'm giving up on my goals to grow this platform and to do something really ambitious and to have it be lofty. I'm saying if it comes, great. But I am no longer interested in doing it by any means necessary the way that I thought I was a few months ago. Heck, even a few weeks ago, because I have just realized that that is way too much on my nervous system. So if the growth is here, I receive it and would love to see it, but I don't know if I'm willing to sacrifice my mental health for it the way that I previously was sacrificing my mental health for it. Because I was sacrificing my mental health and doing all the things, and the numbers weren't climbing. So I can go back to taking care of myself if they're going to be kind of in the same spot. Um, but with that, I have been focusing over the past few weeks a little bit less on the numbers and on the tactics and on the strategies. And I've been focusing a lot more on my own nervous system, because I've just noticed that things have just been rocking me a lot lately in terms of my exhaustion, in terms of my anxiety. And I'm no stranger to anxious feelings or having bouts of anxiety. I've had that experience for most of my life, but it's just been really hitting different. And I also know that, the state of the world and everything that's happening around us is stressful. It stresses me out just as much as it stresses everybody out. But I'm just noticing that I have been so far off center, a lot more severely and a lot more often than I ever was before. And especially with me being older, I'm in my mid 30s, I'm turning 36 later this year. I simply can't have that. I mean, I'm now at the age where if I don't get my stress under control, things are going to start getting a little spooky. And being the wellness girl that I was for my whole 20s and a good chunk of my 30s, I can't have that. And so I've been focusing a lot more on recalibrating my nervous system and tending to myself a bit more. A few months ago, I did release a solo episode of the podcast where I was talking about no longer doing wellness content as much. And this is going to sound maybe a little counterintuitive, but that's actually been really helping me when I can go to the gym and when I can work out and not stress myself out over, well, did I get enough clips of this? Well, did I document it well enough? Will I have something to post about it? I actually find that I get so much more out of it when I can just focus on the workout and not be on my phone and not be stressed over what I'm recording and is somebody in the background and am I, in someone's way, when I can just work out to just work out and it doesn't have to be part of the job anymore. It's so freeing. And so I have really, really enjoyed that. And part of my decision to step back from wellness content was to get a little bit more of that freedom and to kind of reclaim a little bit more of my wellness practices for myself. And so I will say that has actually been really helpful. I have also been really rededicating myself to my yoga practice. I have been practicing yoga off and on for the past 20 years. The fact that I'm old enough to be able to say that is wild. I was first introduced to yoga when I was in high school, and I've been doing it off and on for many years. I did yoga teacher training several years ago when I lived in LA. For a while, I thought that I was going to do more yoga content, kind of turn this into a yoga platform, and that didn't really happen because I realized that I actually just really enjoyed being a yoga student so much more than I enjoyed being a yoga teacher. And I kind of feel that way about fitness and wellness in general. But recently, I have been kind of rededicating myself to my yoga practice. So I have been doing yoga almost every day instead of some of the other workouts that I was doing. Before, I was doing a mix of strength training and Pilates and bar, and then I would maybe do yoga if I got to it. Now I'm prioritizing strength training and yoga and then doing the other formats if I get to it. So, for example, this week that I'm recording this on my workout schedule, I had 2 days of strength training, 4 days of yoga, 1 day of bar. Yes, that is all 7 days. That's because the seventh day I actually just did a relaxing yin class. If you're not familiar with the format of yin, it's basically where you just get into poses, you get into stretches, and you breathe deeply and you hold it for several minutes. And so that is a more kind of restorative form of yoga. It's not as strenuous as maybe like a hot flow. And so, yes, I did move for 7 days because I just kind of felt up to it, but I don't always feel up to it. Partially because I need the flexibility. Like I said, I'm in my mid 30s and things are hitting a little different and I'm a little stiff, but I also just needed it for my mind. I needed it for my nervous system. I needed it because I have been crashing out lately in my personal life in ways that frankly just aren't cool. I've been ruminating a lot and self sabotaging a lot in ways that just aren't me. And so I got to get back to center. I got to get back to the practices that I know help me and ground me. Yoga is one of those things. So I've been doing a lot more yoga lately. I've been getting back into acupuncture, which has also been really great. Basically, I'm turning back into my Los Angeles self because these were all practices that I did a lot when I lived in LA. I kind of fell off of all of them when I moved to New York. And I'm bringing those practices back into the fold. So, doing more yoga as well as doing more acupuncture. And I've found that doing that work on my nervous system has almost been more helpful than some of the more tactical things that I was doing. Just this week, I've been prioritizing more of that nervous system regulation. Like I said, doing multiple days of yoga, planning a day to go get acupuncture, to like journal and sort through my thoughts. And even just this week, I've had some amazing opportunities come my way that are things that I've been trying to call in and manifest for years, that when I was forcing it and when I was going super hard and trying to find a contact and pitching super hard to do these things, they weren't coming. All of a sudden, I start taking care of my nervous system and those opportunities are coming to me straight to my inbox. And I'm like, oh, I see you. Thank you. Okay. Lesson learned. I'm learning that the ability to receive the things that I'm calling in has actually been more important to me than the tactics to get it, because anybody can build a strategy, anybody can make a to-do list, anybody can force something to happen, but learning how to be more in flow, as frustrating as that can be sometimes because it requires our patience, is incredibly helpful. So let's keep the good times rolling. Let's stop self sabotaging as I'm speaking to myself about the various areas of my personal life that I have been self sabotaging on. And let's keep working on this nervous system regulation. Like I said, for me, mostly it's been through yoga and adding acupuncture back into my routine, like 1 to 2 days a month. I've even gotten acupuncture like on ClassPass. It's a really accessible way to get started. That was how I first got into it when I was living in LA, and then now I go to a studio here in New York and get like monthly sessions. But those things have been so incredibly helpful. Something else that has been helpful for me as I'm kind of entering this post crash out period, and I talked about this on Instagram and on TikTok, is what I've been calling the just a little bit more practice, because I have been so severely burnt out the past few months. I was definitely letting a lot of just my self care and my basic responsibilities kind of go by the wayside. And while I still have not recovered enough to just fully go hard at anything, I'm finding that I'm getting better at getting back on track by doing just like a little bit more, right? So an example of doing a little bit more is when I'm having one of those moments where I just feel super run down, I feel really lethargic, like I just can't get up, I can't move, I can't do that thing that's been hanging over my head. How can I do just a little bit more than lay horizontal and think about all the things that are stressing me out? How can I do just a little bit more to set myself up for success? How can I do just a little bit more to help my future self? So that can be everything from, instead of going straight to bed because I just want to lay in bed and scroll TikTok, because that's usually what going to bed looks like for me most nights, if I'm being honest these days. What if instead of just going straight to bed, I fill my water bottle for the gym the next morning and then go to bed? Or what if instead of going straight to bed and skipping my nighttime magnesium supplement, I do just a little bit more and I take the supplement and then I go to bed? Or if instead of moving that pile of clean laundry from the dryer to the couch where it's going to haunt me, what if I do just a little bit more and I just fold it and I just put it away, right? That email that has been hanging over my head that is literally going to take me maybe 2 minutes to respond to. What if I do just a little bit more and just respond to just that one? I don't have to do the whole project. I don't have to boil the ocean, not to bring corporate speak into it. I told you I was a corporate girl for a long time. But what if I do just a little bit more? And if I frame it as, I'm just doing a little bit more to help myself tomorrow, or to help the version of me who is going to have to deal with this, I'm just going to do a little bit to help her out. I'm just going to give her a little bit of a head start. So it doesn't mean that I have to solve every problem, that I have to know exactly how to do everything. It means that I'm just going to do a tiny bit more, just a tiny bit more, to get closer to where I want to be. And when I tell you, this idea of doing just a little bit more, as I've been calling it, has been holding me down, because most days doing just a little bit more has kind of been all I've got. I'm going to do the best I can with what I got. And usually it's just a little bit more, but just a little bit more compounds, and it's better than nothing. And it has also been really helpful for my nervous system regulation and just helping me find clarity and a sense of feeling centered and peaceful when it feels like there's so much that's kind of knocking me off center currently. So that's something that's been helpful for me. Like I said, I shared about it on Instagram and on TikTok recently, and people expressed wanting to hear more about it on the podcast. I wouldn't say that there is much more to say about it than that. So, um, I don't know if I can dedicate like a full hour long episode talking about it, but that's the best explanation that I can give is it's just doing just a little bit more to help your future self. What is like the tiny task you can do or another way to put it is like the 1% better theory, which is another kind of popular theory. I think there's a book about it. Maybe I've read it. I don't know, y'all. I've read so many books. I can't even tell you. Um, maybe I know that there's a book called like the 1% theory or the 1% practice or 1% better, or something like that. That's one of those like 2010s self-help books that everybody read like 10 years ago. But just the idea of not putting so much pressure on yourself to do everything perfectly or to wake up and be a brand new person, but how can you do just a little bit more? How can you implement just an incremental improvement from where you are now, and how can you let that add up? So give it a try. Let me know if it helps you. Again, I've had people reach out to me from Instagram and TikTok where I've talked about it before, sharing how it helped. I had somebody post on Threads and tag me about all the things that she's done just a little bit more of, and she shared how helpful it was for her. So if you do just a little bit more, let me know, tag me, share so that we can all kind of celebrate our wins together. But I'm telling you, the things like taking my magnesium at night, putting my clothes away, filling my water bottle, setting out my workout clothes, like those teeny tiny things have been making such a difference and just help me feel more put together when I'm like, you know what? I don't feel like my life is together, but when I get up to go to the gym, my water bottle's ready. My workout clothes are ready. My apartment's maybe a little bit less messy. And I may not have my whole life figured out, but I have that going for me. You know what I mean? Just a little bit more. So if you try it, let me know if it helps. Some other things is I just kind of wanted to do some updates of some of the things that I've been up to recently and some of the amazing things that I have just got to experience and kind of explore some things like brand trips and some fun book tour talks over the past few months. I know that on social media there's just so much kind of noise and you'll see people post about things and it's like it comes and goes, but um outside of just some of the chaos of my own kind of inner world, I have also had some really amazing opportunities and just got to do some really fun stuff too. So I would say a couple of things. Let's go back to February because that was back when everything really started popping off. Back in February, I ended up going on a retreat to Mexico. It was called the Vivacious Retreat, and it was really all about kind of pouring into yourself and pouring into your personal brand. And it was for those of us who are looking to kind of rebrand our personal brands. Obviously, that was very top of mind for me because I was in the midst of working on the rebrand of this show from Balanced Black Girl to She's So Lucky, and my own personal rebrand that was kind of in alignment with that because it's the same show, but it is kind of a different show. It's a version of the same platform, but it did evolve. And so, as the host of it and the leader of it and the face of it, I had to evolve as well. And so, I went on this really beautiful retreat in Mexico that was a week long to work on that rebrand and to focus a little bit more on okay, what is the type of content that I want to create? What is the image of myself that I want to put out in the world? And it was nice to get away from my kind of day to day distractions and responsibilities to be in a beautiful place, to be in community with other creative women and entrepreneurs who are doing the same. And it was just a really beautiful container. So that particular retreat was in Mexico, and it was hosted by the lovely Marina, who hosts other retreats throughout the year. I think that particular version of the retreat, it was called the Birth Your Brand Baby Retreat. That was her first time doing that particular retreat. So I'm not sure when the next version of that in that location will be, or if she's planning to do that. I did have to cut that trip short by a day. I shouldn't say have to. I chose to come home a day early from that retreat because that was when I had the opportunity to interview Gabrielle Union. I don't know if y'all saw that. We had Gabrielle Union on the show back at the beginning of March, and the way the scheduling worked out, it was like the only window that I had to interview her was going to be the day I got back from the retreat if I would have stayed during the whole retreat. And I just thought, that feels a little tight because I was already going to be getting back to New York at like 11 p.m. without any delays, misconnections, anything the night before interviewing her. And I was like, I want to just move with a little bit more caution. So I ended up going home a day earlier so that I could have a day of buffer in between coming home from Mexico and that interview, because I just didn't want, if I got delayed, if I got stuck somewhere, I wanted to give myself time to figure it out. Immediately after that, I had my brand trip with Disney, which was honestly, truly probably one of the most special weeks of my life. I got invited by Disney to go on their Power of Joy trip back in March. And for that trip, they brought out, I think, like over 70 Black content creators for a trip. We also got to bring our families. So for those who had, a partner, kids, whatever, they got to bring their whole families. For those of us who didn't, we got to bring a plus one. I brought my mom. They flew us down to Orlando. We went to Disney World for a couple of days, and then we ended up on a 4-day Disney cruise. And it was the most magical week. It was jam packed because we were up from early till late with like activities every single day. But everybody on that trip was so kind, and we just built such a cool like community, and everybody felt like family by the end of it. And it was just such a really, really special trip, and it went by so fast. I still have so much content on my phone that I still need to like share, post, all of the things. But that trip was honestly so, so special. I'm so glad that I got to share that experience with my mom. We have done some trips together over the years, and it had been a few years since we'd really gone anywhere solo. And so getting to share that experience with her was really cool, and getting to meet all of the other creators there was really cool. And it was just like a whirlwind of a trip, because that was also another week-long trip that was like jam packed with activities, but we had such an amazing time. And then when I got back from that trip, it was like full speed ahead for the rebrand, because that was the week before the rebrand was going live. So we were getting all the assets together. We were switching everything over. We had team changes. We had technical changes. And it was just like so much happening all at once. And that was also when we announced our spring live shows, the live shows that I did in New York and in DC back in April. We announced it all during that time. So I'm like on a cruise ship with barely any Wi-Fi trying to promote these shows and, approve things for the rebrand. And then I came back, and then it was like go time, and it was time to do all that stuff. And it was a lot. And it was definitely a very stressful time. And I do think that was where some of my burnout really started showing its head. Not because I didn't like what I was doing. I actually was really enjoying it. And again, these are all fantastic things, but it was like, as one person, it was a lot for me to take and juggle all at once. So then we get to the end of March, the rebrand happened. Thankfully, it has been received very well. People have been really supportive, really seen the vision, and honestly, it's been quite seamless. I mean, people have really rallied around it. I do think part of what helped was the amount of time I talked about it and the lead up to it. So I first mentioned rebranding the podcast back at the beginning of January in the How to Rebrand Your Life episode in 2025. I was talking about rebranding the podcast then. I was talking a lot about it on Instagram. I was talking a lot about it on TikTok. I was building anticipation. I, did an episode with Wheezy, who had just rebranded her podcast, to talk about her experience with it. For people who were engaged and tapped in, it wasn't a surprise. Now, I also understand it's like not everybody sees everything. So I do think some people were still surprised just because it's like, they may not, they may listen here and there, or they, maybe I'm not showing up in their algorithm, or maybe they listen to the podcast, but they don't follow me on Instagram, all of those different things. But for people that have truly been a tapped in part of the community, everybody knew what was going on. And because I had been talking about it for so long, I do think that that made it a really smooth transition. Now, in addition to all of that, rebrand aside, podcast aside, all of that, I've had some really fun book related things. I have had the opportunity to be a conversation partner for a few really wonderful book tours from prior guests of the podcast. So I got to be the conversation partner for Daria Burke, who was just on the show about a month ago for the release of her memoir of my own making. And we had such a beautiful conversation. That memoir is so raw and real, and it is a very personal and vulnerable read, which of course it's a memoir. That's the nature of memoirs. But what she shares and how she shares it is there's a lot of depth to it and there's a lot of weight to it. And so getting the opportunity to be in conversation with her about it with her community was just a really, really cool experience and something that I appreciated getting to be a part of. And then I also got to be the conversation partner for Kennedy Ryan's latest book that came out earlier this month, Can't Get Enough. Now, if you're a real romance girl, if you're a real Kennedy stan like I am, okay, we have been waiting for this book forever because it's the third installment in the Skyland series. The Skyland series starts with Before I Let Go, continues with This Could Be Us, and then it ends with Can't Get Enough. And last year, I had Kennedy on the podcast when she was promoting This Could Be Us, one of my all-time favorite podcast episodes I've ever done. I'll make sure I link it in the show notes. You must listen. It will make you rethink standards. It will make you rethink the genre of romance. And she is just so stinking brilliant. And I loved that episode. And so the fact that we kind of got to run it back, not necessarily in podcast format, but this time for her community, for the celebration of this book, which I know so many of us were anticipating because it centers our girl Hendrix, who is one of our favorite characters from that series, was just so, so special. And it's just an incredible book. I'm again so honored that I got to do that. So, in between some of the kind of challenging things and more existential questions that I've had for myself, I'm also so grateful that I've got to kind of use my gift of gab to also have fun conversations and to do things that felt like a little bit less pressure, where I could just show up and be curious and be in conversation with women that I admired. So, so that's my spring update for y'all. When I sat down to record this, I didn't really know what I was going to talk about. I was like, I don't know. I mean, I do want to mention the just a little bit more, and I guess I can kind of do a life update. And yet, I came and I had a whole yap session. But that's what's currently going on with me. That is kind of a look behind the scenes and kind of under the hood of the car at what I've got going on. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of She's So Lucky. If you enjoyed it, please make sure that you're subscribed either on Apple, on Spotify, or on YouTube. If you could also leave us a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple, I would greatly appreciate it. It's what helps us kind of keep the show going. It's what helps us get great guests. It's what helps us get brand partners. Having you guys subscribe and come back week over week is what really helps the show. And I do my best to have as good of a show as we can get. We also have a growing community over on YouTube for those who like to see the visuals. So make sure you give us a subscribe on YouTube as well. Why don't y'all just subscribe on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube so that no matter what mood you're in when an episode comes out, you can get it wherever. Thank you again for checking out this episode. Also, as a reminder, every episode, we usually have really great show notes where we will link things that are mentioned in the episode. We will have the discount codes and the brand partners from our ads, all in the description. So you can just peruse that. You can give me a follow on social media. All of my information is there. You can check out the other episodes that I reference. It's all there for you to make it as easy as possible for you to be tapped in on all things She's So Lucky and to create your own luck. Thank you again for tuning into this episode, and I will see you next week.